Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. We begin in Ottawa, where the Carney government continues to push ahead with this controversial Bill C-5 legislation. The government introduced the legislation for second reading in Parliament on Friday. It was the first time the members of Parliament were able to debate the bill. The government plans to have it pass third reading by June 20th. APTN's Fraser Needham has more.
Bill C-5, an act to enact the Free Trade and Labour Mobility in Canada Act and the Building Canada Act, be disposed.
Assistant Deputy Speaker John Nader gave notice Friday morning that the government plans to move the One Canadian Economy Act to third reading by next Friday. Intergovernmental Affairs Minister Dominic LeBlanc is the sponsor of the bill. He said U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff threats necessitate a tight timeline, but Indigenous rights will still be respected.
Every major project advanced through the changes proposed in Bill C-5 will require real partnerships with Indigenous peoples. We've already announced that we're setting up an Indigenous Advisory Council. We will ensure that self-determination, inclusion, and respect are at the heart of this process.
The legislation does a number of things, including giving the government the ability to fast-track energy pipelines. By streamlining the approval process through one office and reducing the time frame to do this from 5 to 2 years. But the Assembly of First Nations says things are moving too fast and the Liberals need to take the necessary time to do proper consultations. Bloc Québécois MP Sébastien Lemire pressed the government on how quickly the legislation is moving.
Indigenous people are being called on to play ball. And when you're given 5 days to study a bill, and when you're saying that we consulted the First Nations, in my mind, that's not consultation. Not each First Nation was not consulted.
In response, LeBlanc reassured that consultations will take place, but only after a project of national interest is chosen.
And then would allow the government and the private sector to conduct exactly that in-depth consultation. So here we're talking about, we're currently building something, but before a project is designated or approved, obviously those consultations will take place.
Speaking to media outside the House of Commons on Friday, Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet said the government is massively increasing its powers while subverting parliamentary process at the same time.
How could we go forward with such a huge bill, with huge consequences for Quebec and Canada, without at least do what we have been elected to do? And that means studying thoroughly this bill in committee. The government seems to want to avoid scrutiny on the bill.
The AFN is set to host a virtual meeting on C-5 with First Nations leaders from across the country on Monday. As well, debate will continue on the proposed legislation the same day. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
An early start to the forest fire season in northern Ontario is keeping an Indigenous Emergency Operations Centre busy. ISN Musqueam is positioning itself as a leader in training and deploying Indigenous peoples to emergency situations. And as APTN's Mike McDonald reports, it's gearing up for an active season.
The acting CEO of ISN Musqueam says the organization began its busy season by assisting a far north community that had been evacuated due to flooding. Joe Tom Sayers says it was only 1 day after residents returned home that they got their first forest fire evacuation call.
We got activated by Indigenous Services Canada to host a community from Northern Ontario due to a forest fire. That's about 1,300 folks. Quickly after that, another First Nation of about 1,000 was evacuated under our care. And then more recently, the Sandy Lake First Nation were hosting probably close to 1,000 at this point, if not up to 1,500.
Sayers says the moment ISN Musqueam gets a call to assist, they waste no time getting to work.
We immediately trigger our own process where we immediately look for accommodation sites, assemble our teams, build out our incident command tables, put in a communication plan, safety plans for folks given the sites that we're going to be hosting them in. all within 24, 48 hours.
Ayasan-Masqua is wholly owned by the Missinaba Cree First Nation, and Sayers wants to see the company's model of First Nations helping First Nations adopted on a national level.
With First Nations leading the supports around evacuations, that is the way of the future. We're demonstrating it, we're proving it on the ground and on the field, and we want to see this model replicated across the country, and anything we can do to help other communities build that capacity out, we're there for them.
Sayers says work continues on Ayasan-Masqua's evacuation center, which will be located on the Missinaba Cree First Nation, which is about 340 kilometers north of Sault Ste. Marie. He adds phase 1 of the project will be finished by spring 2026, at which time they will be able to host up to 800 evacuees. Mike McDonald, APTN National News, Sault Ste. Marie.
Manitoba, Kuwait-Nawi Okimakanak has teamed up with the Southern Chiefs organization to better serve the hundreds of First Nation wildfire evacuees displaced throughout the province. At a Friday press conference, MKO Grand Chief Garrison Satie said the SCO will boost on-the-ground support at sites outside of Winnipeg. That includes congregate shelters and hotels in Brandon, Dauphin, Winkler, and Portage-la Prairie. There are nearly 21,000 registered wildfire evacuees in Manitoba, but some, including those in Cranberry, Portage, and York Factory First Nation, will be allowed to head home this weekend. Satie said a task force with the province, Red Cross, and First Nations communities to coordinate a smooth return for all evacuees is in the works.
Task force that's being created right now to facilitate a process of repatriation, and the mode of transportation will probably be buses, and having a coordinated effort to bring everybody home through a system where buses are being used. One of the communities is isolated, so that'll be a different process, of course. So they're already starting to plan on how they're going to repatriate the members of our First Nation communities. So it's something that's happening already. They're starting to plan, and when that plan is available, they'll be able to execute it when the time comes for everybody to go home.
Well, as wildfires continue to devastate a large portion of Manitoba, Premier Wab Kinew took a helicopter tour of the province to see the damage firsthand. He met with evacuees to hear their stories and how firefighters are doing their best to prevent more damage. Here's Sav Jonesa with an update on Manitoba's wildfires.
On Thursday, Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew met some of the American firefighters helping suppress the numerous wildfires in the province. The meeting was part of his day-long aerial tour of northern Manitoba to see the extent of the damage. According to the latest fire situation report, around 900,000 hectares of land has been burnt in Manitoba so far. That's 19 times the size of Winnipeg, the province's largest city.
This burn area is massive. This is just a huge part of the province that has been burned.
More than 20,000 Manitobans have been evacuated as a result. While some evacuated communities may be able to return in the coming days, Kinew said others may still have to wait weeks until they can go home. Thousands of people are currently staying in hotels or with family, but not all are so lucky. During his tour, Kinew visited a temporary shelter in Thompson housing 180 evacuees. He said more hotels need to open up rooms, but he doesn't want to resort to using emergency powers to force them to do so.
We got families with young kids sleeping in a rink on a cot going into week 3 in that situation, and then we drive by in the same community a hotel room with an empty parking lot. We are asking for a bit more from the hotel sector.
Addressing the province's response to the wildfires, Kinew says there will be opportunity to learn lessons from this crisis for next year.
When we're talking about that, after the fact review, it's equipment, it's the human resources, more initial attack firefighters in the future, it's infrastructure, and it's also, having that runway long enough for an evacuation operation too. So there's a lot of different questions we're going to have to look forward to in the future.
Floyd Mason first met Kinew when his community of Wasagamak First Nation evacuated due to wildfires in 2017. He came to the airport tarmac to shake his hand again.
I'm happy that I'll be able to take another picture this year, this happening again, evacuation and all. just memories, I guess.
He says Canoe's government is doing a good job with the wildfire crisis, but more could be done to prepare First Nations evacuees unfamiliar with Winnipeg.
When you get evacuated from the community, it's very hard, especially if you're first time in the city. You don't know where you're going, what you're doing, and you end up someplace where you're not supposed to be.
While Mason's community is currently safe, he feels for those currently being affected.
We understand what other people are going through, what they're going through right now. We understand, and the only thing we can do is send prayers and hope that everybody's okay.
Sav Jonesa, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Across the country, the search for remains at former residential school sites continues, with many communities doing the work privately. One of those areas is located on a reserve in northern Saskatchewan, where technology combined with oral history has resulted in more discoveries in Beauval. First Nations University Indigenous Communications art student Tyrone Perreault, now with a major public announcement from English River First Nation.
English River First Nation in northwestern Saskatchewan has a long and painful history with the residential school system. The Beauval Indian Residential School, now demolished, operated for decades on this site. Like many others across Canada, searches are taking place near where the school once stood. A difficult but important revelation.
I didn't go, my parents didn't go, or my grandparents didn't go. But I'm a father. And to imagine RCMP coming in and taking my son away, what it would do to me, it would break me. And to imagine what it would do to my son.
A group known as the Returning Home Society has unveiled the latest results of a ground-penetrating radar search on the school grounds. Using GPR and S4 imaging technology, the team identified an additional 60 sites of interest. This builds on a previous search conducted in 2021, which revealed 93 sites, bringing the total to 153. These findings support the oral histories passed down by survivors and families in the community. Dawn McIntyre, project manager with the Returning Home Society, says these discoveries help confirm what many have always known.
We believe those stories, but in terms of, knowing and understanding the locations and understanding, where we work and live and play, we want to know. We want to know about that. We want to know where we're walking and what happened here.
English River First Nation is not the only community to be affected by the most recent findings. Rick LaLiberty is mayor of the nearby community of Beauval. He described how surrounding off-reserve communities were also impacted by the Beauval Residential School.
The communities affected are from a huge geographical area. You see the Beaver River here, and you have the Beauval. Our original community was called Misagamia. It's about 4 kilometers further up the river.
With only 15% of the ground searched, this is just the beginning. There's no guidebook for what comes next, but the community says it will move forward together, grounded in truth. The search continues, guided by technology, oral history, and a deep commitment to healing. In English River First Nation, I'm Tyrone Perreault.
Thanks, Tyrone. Time for a quick break, but stick around. There's more to come. Welcome back. A ceremonial space in the core of Winnipeg's inner city has been shut down for over half a year. Tired of not getting any answers as to why, some locals have began occupying the building, hoping to force its board to open its doors. APTN's TR Wheatley has more.
Mikisu Miigwan speaks to her ancestors in song outside the Circle of Life Thunderbird House. She's a month into her ceremony, living inside, wanting to know why the building designed by Douglas Cardinal is dying.
We're sick and tired of this space not being used the way it's supposed to be, this space just being desecrated when this is supposed to be a beacon of hope and a beacon of light and healing for everyone.
Mikisew Miigwan is one of a half a dozen people occupying the building at any given time. They want the board of directors to hold annual meetings and explain what happens to the funding.
The board is just at a standstill. They are unwilling to work with us. They are unwilling to set a date and time. We've made consistent communication with them on record, like through email and text.
They also want an elders council and community input as to who sits on the board. They want regular staff working on programs again, drum sessions, a sweat lodge, groups like AA and anger management. Mikisew Miigwan says Thunderbird House could be the difference between life and death. She arrived in Winnipeg 15 years ago battling addictions.
When I moved to the city, this is the first place I came because it was the only place I knew of that I could try and get the healing and the support that I needed. And to have these doors closed to community when there's so much healing that's needed, it's just heartbreaking. The board let us know that they spent a bunch of money on the windows and repairing the windows. So I guess this is the repair job.
She asks why no visible renovations have been done after Indigenous Services Canada sent money for restoration after the Thunderbird House was broken into and copper was stripped off its roof. It opened in 2000 as a safe space to learn culture and traditions and to heal. About all that's left is this beaver skinning class run by a different organization. The inside is closed to the public.
Until everything is fixed.
Colleen Rajat says the doors are closed until repairs can be done. She was a volunteer board member for about a year. She took over as chair of the board of directors a month ago, around the same time the occupation started.
So I had a meeting with Indigenous Services Canada, Tanya LaFontaine, and she just sent me the funding agreements that were put in place before my time, even before I joined the board. So I have to print them out and go over them and see exactly how much money is there and how it can be spent.
Rajat is a 60s scoop survivor. Like the occupiers inside, she used Thunderbird House to reconnect with her people.
I came here at the beginning of my journey to find my birth family, and I was able to get support. So that's why I have taken on this role of chair at Thunderbird House, because as we can see, it's in need of repair, and I really want to bring it back to what it used to be.
She says she worries for the safety of the occupiers. The roof leaks and could cave in. Rajat did phone police. They told her to get an injunction.
An injunction costs $50,000.
She also knows going the court route isn't helpful, as all parties want the same thing, the Thunderbird House up and running once again. Until then, she's asking for some patience as she works toward calling an AGM this summer and getting the repairs that are desperately needed for the building before the winter. TR Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Thanks, TR. Happy birthday, by the way. A new episode of APTN Investigates airs tomorrow night. We'll speak with journalist Christopher Reed about the documentary after the break. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Timothy shared a photo of his son posing next to the art installation called All Our Relations. This is found in Hamilton, Ontario, and is the work of artist Angela de Montigny. Thanks for sharing, Timothy. You can send your photos to share@aptn.ca for the chance to be featured as our next photo of the day. APTN Investigates returns tomorrow night with an all-new episode. Journalist Christopher Reed looks into the recent battle over LeMay Forest and the mystery surrounding unmarked graves at the site. Activists fought for months to protect the land from development before Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew stepped in at the 11th hour. With more on the story, Chris joins us now in studio. Christopher, thanks for being with us. Now, Premier Kinew announced the province would be expropriating the land on April 14th. What's happened since then?
Well, actually, within a couple of days, the title on the property had already changed to provincial ownership. The former owner, Maziar Yayapur, will be looking for fair market value, of course, and compensation for investments he made in trying to get his plan to put in a 2,500 unit assisted care facility approved. The people who had been trying to stop the development mostly seem pretty happy with the Premier's move, though they do have some small concerns about making it a provincial park. They'd like it done right, especially given there is a cemetery.
No doubt. The LeMay Forest is in St. Norbert on the south end of Winnipeg. What can you tell us about that piece of land?
Well, it's a remarkable sort of wilderness enclave where people like to walk on the river dike and observe all kinds of animal activity. When I was there with our shooter, Rob Smith, we saw foxes there and deer. It's not far from the fork of the Red and the LaSalle rivers. There's evidence of Indigenous presence, of course, in the area going back millennia, and it's in St. Norbert, an historic neighborhood that is, I'm not a historian, but in some respects it's where the province was born. Louis Riel formed his National Committee of the Métis in St. Norbert in 1869. And the LeMay Forest is also right out behind a building that is now a treatment center, but from 1904 to 1948 it housed a Catholic orphanage, the Asile Richot. And the orphanage had a cemetery out back at the edge of the forest, and the cemetery has become the heart of the matter.
Now, what is known about how many children may be in that cemetery?
Well, the St. Boniface Historical Society has a lot of the relevant records and will be employing someone over the summer to do some deeper research on that question. But so far, we do have records that indicate almost 3,400 children died at the orphanage in its 44-year run. If you do the math and average it out, that is 77 children dying per year. The records seen so far indicate that 700 children were buried in that cemetery out back, but the question is, where did the others from that 3,400 total number go? That's the unknown. I should mention that in many cases the ethnicity of the child was recorded, but it is thought by an archivist that we speak to that the number of Métis children that were there and died there might be higher than recorded. St. Norbert, of course, was a community with a lot of Métis people. It's expected that a fair number of the children being dropped off at the orphanage were from the immediate area, but the records uncovered so far tell us that just 31 of the 3,338 dead were Métis. We're hoping, though, that we will get a more conclusive understanding of that in the coming months as more research is done. I think many would be interested to know as well how it is that so many children were dying in this orphanage run by the Sisters of the Miséricorde.
No kidding. Well, Christopher, looking forward to it. Thanks for speaking with us about it.
Thank you.
And you can catch Cherished Woods, The Fight for LeMay, tomorrow night on APTN Investigates. Tonight, 6:30 Eastern is when you'll want to tune into Nouvelle. Host Kim Sullivan gives us a little glimpse of tonight's show. Hey, Kim.
Hey Dennis, who will replace Mandy Galmasti as Grand Chief of the Cree Nation? We have your list of candidates. We also continue Indigenous History and Heritage Month as well as celebrate Pride Month with the launch of a gorgeous Indigenous mural here in the city. You will smile watching a bunch of youth entrepreneurs showcase their creativity, and you'll be seduced by a multidisciplinary artist, Soleil Lanière. Her career truly taking off, and we got to chat with her. It's all on tonight.
I am a big Soleil fan, so thanks, Kim. You can catch her right here in about 90 seconds from now. We're all out of time for your APTN National News for this Friday. You can find news, of course, anytime by visiting our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Marcy Miigwech, thanks for being with us. Have a great night.